Patrick Callaghan is the partner CTO at DataStax, working with enterprises and partners to implement and support large-scale mission-critical applications across hybrid cloud environments. Prior to DataStax, Patrick held architecture roles in the banking and finance sector, covering real-time distributed applications. Welcome to the Mindset Shift. Nice to have you here.
It's nice to be here, Tim. Pleasure.
We're really looking forward to chatting and finding out a bit about you. So tell me where you're from and your background and those type of really important things for me.
Yeah, so started off, I grew up in Finglas in North Dublin, the youngest of five, so struggled, but I was also spoiled as well. Very simple upbringing. My mum and dad worked very hard, 5 kids, traditional Irish family. I often look back now at the pandemic and all this going on about how simple my life was. And, I've got 3 kids at the moment and they're all addicted to devices and so on and gaming consoles. And, I just remember being on my bike. I just remember kicking a ball. And it was, a very simple life. Went to DCU, which was about 30 minutes walk down the road, which was great. I got to partake in a lot of the after college or after class activities. So I had a great college life. Had a bit of a wake up call in first, I think it was maybe the end of first year. I failed one of my exams, but I got an exemption. So I had to, slow down a little, take my studies a lot more seriously than I did. And my mum and dad were always very much, I was the youngest of 5 and there's quite a gap between myself and my eldest brother. So they were very focused on, the stable job, making sure you were, employable. So, putting my head down and doing my studies was the most important thing for them and myself. And it gave me a real grounding in what I wanted to do, which was technology. Which was funny. It was something I fell into rather than pursued. I always liked computers, but I actually wanted to be an actuary. And I'm in a lot of ways, I'm glad I didn't. But I was always very much targeted towards maths. I loved maths, physics. I did applied maths. That was really where I saw my strength, and I was always helping other people with their maths and figuring things out. It was always like a puzzle, and I think that's a great way to look at maths. But yes, and then I got into computer applications in DCU, and then obviously I've worked in computers since then.
So let's go back to Finglas, and you're the youngest of 5. So you have an older brother you mentioned, and there was a gap. What was the rest of the siblings?
So brother, sister, brother, sister, brother. Traditional Irish family. My wife is different. She's a girl, and then 4 electricians. So, but my family, there was a bit of a gap between the first 3 and myself and my sister. And growing up, as the youngest of 5 can be difficult because you always want what they want. You want to stay up as late as them, and there's always that you want to be older, you want to achieve, and you want to be that little seen as older. But then there's the obvious advantage of being spoiled and being let out. And by the time the 5th one comes along, go on, I don't care what you do. I know you'll be back at some stage for your dinner. So I had a lot of freedoms in that sense. And I had a very, very happy childhood again. And, I'm 43 now. I reminisce about my childhood and the friends that I miss and I long to see. And I look at my kids and how they're living in a very different place, in a very, very different, environment to grow up in, but very happy times, I think.
I'm fascinated with the fact that it's boy, girl, because in my own personal family, we also had 5 children, but I was the middle child. So I didn't have the fortunes of being the youngest and the spoiled child. I was the middle child with some of the similar characteristics you described. You want to get what your older, in my case, brother and sister got, or in my case, what your younger brother and sister got. So, but it was really, as you say, a typical Irish family. Tell me about your mom and dad. What did your dad work at first?
My dad was a carpenter by trade. Always making things, always fixing things, great with his hands. He worked in the border works. He was a foreman in the border works for most of his life. Took early retirement. He suffered with headaches and migraines. Um, but just, a doer, an absolute doer. And my mom was the homemaker. She had 5 kids. She was always doing something. She was always hauling bags up from Super Quinn, or she was, banging some rugs out in the garden, or, all those things that we think about the Irish mother. That was my mother. She is absolutely wonderful. And actually, when I think, again, these things are great, reminiscing can be really great when you think about what qualities you want to take forward for your kids. And that's, I think about that a lot now. My eldest is 13, and she's, becoming a teenager, and things are changing for her. But I think about what my mother and father gave me, some good, some bad. But my dad was always, he gave me great counsel in don't think, just do. He always focused on the doing part of things. And I was a thinker. I was always that logical, step-by-step process, but he would always try and instill, don't think about it, just do it. And we played golf together for years, and he taught me how to play. Like that, golf is a very psychological game. If you think about it, you're going to end up in agony. You'll hate the game, but sometimes you just have to hit the ball, and that's that kind of thing that he instilled in me. And it's funny, I think, like all boys, I think about my dad, and I think, I wish I'd listened to him more. I wish I'd listened when he showed me how to change a plug, or change a wheel, or fix a fence, or something like that, because things like that, to me, seem quite difficult, because I don't have the hands-on experience, and I'd be sitting playing a game. No, I don't want to do that. And he had all those skills, from that experience. I could have got so much more. But he's still alive. I'm not saying I can't, but he's older now, and I probably can't learn as much from him. But I certainly wish I had.
It's an interesting line, isn't it? Don't think, just do. Especially when somebody like you, you described yourself as a thinker, and if you think of the roles you looked at, technology and actually, that's a very, logical, sequential, thought provoking world. How hard was that for you, though, to make that transition as a youngster now? Let's say in your Finglas world, because you're thinking all these things and your dad just wants you to do it. How hard was that for you?
Oh, he got very frustrated. I mean, for me, it was like, I'm just the petulant child. I mean, I'm the pain in the ass in some of this. But my father was quite frustrated. And I see it when I try and get my kids to cut the grass, or, anything that involves manual labor is seen as a hardship. And that's, that mindset is so crushing. It really is. It tears people apart, and gives them very low self-esteem, because the act of doing is everything. The act of thinking is just, you can sit around in your bed all day and think about how the grass gets cut and how the shelves get fixed without picking up a hammer or a lawnmower. Nothing actually happens. So execution, to me, and I don't want to jump ahead, but execution is everything. And I've seen so many talented people who are so smart and clever not achieve very much because of that lack of execution, that lack of just do it. So when I was growing up, I was lazy to a point that I relied on my wits, my cleverness, my applied maths. I was always getting great marks in those subjects. So I didn't have to give and do a lot of the hard work that now I realize is really where the passion comes from. Doing is where you actually get the motivation, you get that flow, and all the great things that we think about outcomes come from doing, not thinking.
we can go forward and backwards, Patrick. There's no, set format. So I'm going to come into the execution point because I love the word. Okay. I mean, even the visualization on the golf course, I play golf. And what I find is when I overthink something on the golf course, I never execute the shot. It's just because I've got frozen by the analysis of my thinking of the shot or of the outcome in that sense. When I'm playing golf at my best, I'm just up, I'm hitting the shot, and I'm analyzing what happened, good or bad, and then I'm hitting the next shot. So talk to me about execution, and because I would agree with you, there are so many people who sadly had so much talent and never delivered for themselves what they were capable of because of their lack of execution. So just let's tease that out a bit further. Why are you so focused on that word?
It's a great question because I haven't always been. This has kind of come in the last 5-6 years, in my current role and the roles I've held previously within my company. It's become very apparent that doing things, especially helping people, in my job, a lot of what I do is help people see things, help people, create outcomes and stuff. The only reason those outcomes come about is through execution. Now, execution can mean a lot of things to different people. And my CEO, our CEO at DataStax, has a podcast called Inspired Execution. And we talk about it every single week on the All Hands. And execution is habit in a way. It's kind of like, how do I go about everything that I do to create the outcome that I want? And we can do so many activities, but activities are just things that are on the road to an outcome. So without the outcome, the activities mean nothing. And I tell this to my kids as well. It's like, writing an essay isn't the outcome. The outcome is putting it in, having it marked by your teachers, and then learning from what you could have done better. That's the outcome. How did I get better from this essay? And just doing the essay isn't that. So, we talk a lot about, inspired execution and thoughtful execution. So you don't have to think about something very long to start executing. You think about it and you say, what do I need to achieve? What is the outcome I'm trying to drive here? What are the steps I'm going to take? If one or two of these steps in the process don't work, what is the process for backtracking and trying something else? And then you start to do them. There is everything that we want to achieve is just a matter of steps. But it's those first steps that are the hardest. And those first steps are the ones that lead us on the path to knowing how to get to the outcome. It's like that idea that, you're 100 steps in the fog, or you can't see the 100 steps, but you trust in the sense that if you take 50, you're going to be 50 closer to the end. And it's that trust that you will get there, but there has to be those steps and activities on that path, and that confidence that they will lead to an outcome. So it's all about the outcome, right? It's all about that. So that's really where I think about execution, not just about thinking, but doing, and then rationalizing at the end.
So let me just develop that a bit more with you, because I'm fascinated about this subject, because I really believe in execution is key. But I might have a slightly different thought process on it. So you give two analogies there. One was the 100 steps in the fog, right? So I would say to somebody that the first step is the most important step, because that's all you can control. You can't control the second step if you don't take the first step, where you said 50 steps. So what I'm saying to myself, the first step is the critical piece that I would view. The second point is the story about the essay with your children, which I really love. But again, all they can control is the essay. They can't control the teacher and the marking. And then, so they lose control in that period of it, but then they regain control in the learning part in that sense. So sometimes with execution, the end outcome is outside our control at some parts in the journey. Is that a fair challenge?
Absolutely, absolutely. But here's the challenge I would give back. Without the feedback loop to come back on, there is no way to know whether what you've done has created the outcome you wanted. So, building a business or driving a sales campaign or marketing or whatever it is, the outcome may be that you launch a new product, but did you launch it successfully? And that is totally out of your control. But then how do you control that part? It's through metrics. It's through KPIs. It's about how then do I measure and this idea, how do I measure the success of what I've done? Because without that, I don't believe there's any real growth. Because the next time you do it, how are you going to make it better? How am I not going to make the mistakes? How am I going to appeal to more people? How am I going to have better conversion rates? So there is a definite sense that, you have to give over something at the end, that control, but the journey doesn't end. That's what I mean. There has to be something that comes out of what comes back, that feedback, to drive something better. And I think that's something in all of us, right? We have to take back what the outside world gives us, because without that, we don't have a sense of what we're doing is making any difference.
So I fully agree, Patrick, about the feedback. And, if we take the essay analogy, so the essay is in control, the marking is out of control, and then the feedback gives us the chance to reestablish control. And I heard a saying many years ago about data and KPIs. What gets measured gets done. And one of the things that I have seen in businesses, a lot of times business don't measure key things. They take them for granted. And, and if you don't measure something, you don't actually find out, well, how can we improve? How can we get better? Because, if you take a golfing analogy, if you don't record your score at the end of the round, you don't know, well, if I shot 72 or 102, how it can be better the next time, because you haven't recorded your score. So even in a simple analogy like golf, the measurement of your score, ignoring your handicap now, the actual measurement of your score is a precursor to improving the next day or not.
Exactly. And from a game of golf, is it your chipping you need to work on? Are you drawing your drives? Is your putting off? Do you need to, throw out the tools and start again? And, and the great thing about school, and, obviously I'm learning through my kids what school is again. But we never talk about tests as a negative thing. That they see it as a negative thing, but I always bring up this idea that, a test is only there to show you what you don't know, or what mistakes you've made, so that you can improve yourself for the next test. And if you think, we when the kids come back with a test, and luckily they're all, bright young kids, but we go through and say, you got that one wrong. Okay, do you know how to do that? Some. If you don't, then you need to go back and check, do a couple of examples and understand the sum. If you made a mistake in adding and subtracting, that's something you need to work on. And if you think about it that way, then you say, well, 90% of your, 3 months or your year of your maths, you need to work on this 10%, and then you'll know 100%. And then you'll feel great going in knowing that you know 100%. So that's the way we look at things. And I think the same applies to your work, in your personal life in some way, and your finances. Like, knowing where you can improve is always a catalyst. It's a motivator. And I think that's really important for all of us.
And just to develop that point, Patrick, we can all improve. That's the one thing I keep saying to the clients I work with, the organizations I speak to. We can all improve. And it can be a marginal improvement. We cannot get twice as good. That's just not realistic. We're just not capable of getting, but we can be a little bit better every single day. And that totality of that little bit over a week is obviously a lot, and over a year is substantial in that sense. But sometimes we stop wanting to improve, or we just get complacent about where we are. And, that can actually lead to businesses failing, because we get complacent about our position in the marketplace or in the sector we're in, or it can actually be in our own individual careers, complacency that, well, we've reached this level and, we're really cool now, we're really good, and we find ourselves very quickly at this level only, or unfortunately at lower levels in that environment.
Yeah, and I learn, I've heard people say this before, so it's nothing new, but I learn a lot from my kids, in both positive and negative ways. But I have a daughter who's 11, and she decided she was good at gymnastics, and we have a trampoline and all that kind of stuff. But she decided one day she wanted to be good at contortion. Now, contortion is something that would scare the life out of a father. When you walk in and your daughter's all bent, it's ridiculous. But she spent every day on her own. She picked up a YouTube channel and she saw these people, and they told her, how to stretch and how to prepare. And every day she would show me something different. And every day she'd have her feet over her head and she'd be tipping one down. And then next of all, she has 2 feet down. And it was just those tiny increments every day. We think about, my wife does yoga, and I try to do stretches every morning because I sit a lot of my day. But it's the little things, that little 1%. I saw a great thing recently, like because of compound interest. If you make yourself 1% better every day, you get to a point where you're 37 times better, right? Because of compounding. And the same, like if you get 1% worse, you get to a huge decrement in how you're actually behaving. So it is the little things. It's the stretching in the morning means that I don't have a bad back in the evening. Eating the right food makes me feel better the next day. It's all that, I think about preparation a lot, that Roy Keane quote. But yeah, I think the little things do make the biggest difference, and the simple things.
And one final thing in that is, you can't execute unless you prepare, is my experience.
So one of my favorite quotes, and it's not the Roy Keane fail to prepare, prepare to fail, was I think it was Lincoln or someone said, if I had 6 hours to cut down a tree, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe. And that to me says everything about preparation. In my position now, I talk to a lot of leaders in some of the biggest companies in the world, some of the biggest partners, GSIs, global system integrators. And they only give you a certain amount of time, right? You have to be able to, one, capture their attention, two, enable them in some way that drives an outcome for both you and them. And you have to motivate them in a sense that nobody will do something just because they can. They have to have a sense of what it is that they're going to achieve, what the joint partnership is, all that kind of stuff. Preparation, you can spend, I've got some meetings today, and it's like I will spend an hour prepping for a 15-minute segment of a 30-minute call. Because, and I believe this sincerely, what you say matters, how you present yourself matters, how someone sees you matters. And if you've only got a couple of sentences that they will remember, out of 15 minutes, they may remember a minute worth of content. What is the picture on a slide you want them to remember? What are the words that you want them to remember? How do you want them to feel when you say those words, when you show that picture? And then what is the result of all that work? Is it for them to take action? Is it for them to be informed? Is it for motivation? Are you enabling someone? And that all takes preparation. Winging these things is, how failure happens way too easily too. I mean, it's just a bad habit not to prepare.
I'm smiling partly because I coach people on communication skills, and one of the things I talk to them about is, whatever time you have, with your presence, your visualization, how you say things, the words you say, the slides you use. One of the things I really have an issue with is, particularly technical people overfill the slide. And I've been at many conferences and many presentations where the presenter says, you won't be able to read what's on the slide, so let me explain it to you. And I'm saying, why can't I read it? I'm supposed to be able to read it. And the reason I can't read it is you've not prepared. You've just stuck something onto a slide because it looked good or whatever. So I fully agree what you said about, preparation, and then the importance of, in whatever time frame you have, to engage and motivate and enable or advise or update the person or people you're talking to. The words you say come out much more easily and much easier for the audience if you've prepared. And then the great thing, my experience is people say, you just winged it. And I say, oh, you don't know. I teach people, if you're to speak for 1 hour, for every 1 minute you speak, Patrick, you must prepare that presentation for 1 hour. And they look at me and say, what? I said, because what happens is that if you have a 15-minute presentation to a major audience and you prepare for 15 hours, if technology goes down, if you forget your notes, you're so well prepared, you can carry the presentation. If you're not prepared and winging it, you'll get found out, particularly at the highest levels, Patrick.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, I would say it's so relevant when you're talking to people at higher levels. They only have a certain amount of time. They're driving huge initiatives, hundreds, millions, maybe billions of dollars, and you coming in unprepared to talk about something with rambling sometimes is just a waste of their time, and it's very disrespectful. To be prepared and to have presence and focus and discipline about what you're talking about and to who is very respectful. People appreciate that. And my previous CEO, lovely guy, very natural. He was a coach. He was in a previous life, he was a coach of a football team, but he was so motivational. He just knew how to get people looking in their eyes and all the rest. And I met a coach, a talent coach or a speech presentation coach. And we were talking, I said, gee, Billy, his name, I said, Billy just does this with ease. He's just got it naturally. And she was like, Billy practices hours and hours and hours. And I thought it was natural, but of course, that's why it's natural. Another thing which really caught me was, great people prepare so that they can do it well. Brilliant people prepare so they can't do it wrong. Right? So you get to a point, it's like the golf analogy. If you're thinking about swinging a club, pretty much you're trying to hit it correctly. The best people in the world have done it so many times, they can't hit it wrong. Their body, their movement, their presence, everything they do is geared towards doing it right. So that the habits and the practice has developed so much that they can't actually swing the club incorrectly. And I believe that with presentations as well. If you get to a stage where you can't do it wrong, when you have that presence, you have that natural ability, you have that inspirational way of your words flow, you have them at the tip of your tongue. That's what makes you great. And you see that on TED presentations as well. People who are just perfect at what they do.
I call preparation being professional. It's unprofessional not to be prepared, because at any level, but particularly at the higher levels, if you go into a meeting unprepared, that's unprofessional, irrespective of the outcome. And some days you might get away with it because the person you're engaging with, you might make one point that resonates, but in my view, it's unprofessional. I want to take you back to Finglas now, and your mom, because you made a point about your dad, gave you great guidance. Don't think, just do it. What was the one thing you look back from your mom in your younger years that would stand out for you?
I would say warmth. I would just say warmth, comfort. I don't want to be mushy about it, but she is a very, very loving woman. Now, with that comes, the worry mother. I remember I went to China. I was going on an adventure in China for a month. And she said, "Oh my God, what happens if you get lost? Like, how will we find you in China?" You know, that's kind of where that sums up my mother in one word. It's, you know, she was just wonderful, hard worker, you know, never complained. I remember she telling me, you know, she used to drag everybody or have to drag everybody out of bed. She's shouting at the bottom of the stairs with a cup of tea or, you know, toast in hand, running out the door. But she never complained about what she had to do. And she always got up at about 7 a.m. because the way in her head was, she got up, she got the house ready, she had everything done, and she had her own time in the morning. You know, there was no yoga, there was no, you know, my mom going off to Pilates and having coffee with the girls. It was get up, have your cup of tea, you know, set yourself straight, and then get ready for the onslaught of five kids getting out of bed, and, you know, fighting for the shower and all those things that go along with family life. But she was prepared. She was always prepared. She always knew what she had to do, and she always did it really well.
It's a great visualization of your mom, you know, having everything ready, and then, you know, the silence and quietness of the downstairs, and then just chaos. Once eventually, you know, the five kids decide to wake up, you know, then there's rush into the bathroom, to the shower, and, you know, there's all those type of things. So just that visualization of a normal Irish family,
Yeah.
and it's somewhat different today because, you know, it was just, as you say, your mom wasn't rushing off to yoga or to Pilates or to go for coffee with people. You know, she'd have tea in the house with people who called around. So it's just a lovely visualization, Patrick, that you've just created there for me, and obviously for the people that who will watch and listen to this, of what life was like for your mom and for you as the beneficiary of it on the reverse side. You also mentioned college in your first year that you didn't apply yourself, because my impression from what you said earlier on is stuff was kind of easy enough for you up to that. You know, you were very good at maths, obviously, right? Which gave you an advantage in many other subjects, I would say. And life was kind of easy through your schooling career academically because you were kind of good. And then you get to college. So is it fair to say for the first time in your educational career to that point in time, you had failed?
Yeah, not as blatant as failed, I would say, but I certainly got a wake up call. Certainly, I mean, you know, there's this sense that, you know, as you know, in your schooling years, you get help, right? So there's teachers there. They teach a subject, but they also help to, you know, nurture talent and nurture skills within students. When you get to college, you know, lecturers lecture, they talk to 200-300 people, and that's it. You either take it in and apply it, or you don't get the outcome that you want. And, you know, I did computer applications in DCU, so we always had computers. We were always messing around, hacking and doing projects. And the one thing I failed was economics, which was as far from maths as you know, it was the real business and macroeconomics and understanding the way the world worked. But it did give me that wake up call that I said, actually, you know, we did economics, we did law, we did statistics, we did a lot of the broader type of subjects that kind of build a foundation in business and how you apply yourself in the outside world. So it was a great grounding, but I had to work really hard at those subjects where they were more around the, you know, the details and the reading and the study and the projects on that sense.
You obviously, you know, you got the exemption as you made a point, and then you went on and successfully finished college. Where did you go after that?
So I worked for a company called Altion. So straight out of college, we were really lucky because computers were taking off. It was 99. Everybody was looking for computer graduates. So I found myself with a couple of people from my year being part of a graduate program for a company called Altion, and they did a lot of software for telecoms companies. And it was a great experience. Got to got to kind of live that first, working life with a lot of friends. It wasn't that I was on my own, and some great leaders around me. It was only for a short enough time. I think it was about a year and a half, and then the dot-com boom was very, everybody was building software. So being in a telecoms provider probably wasn't as sexy as being in a dot-com. And so I moved to a different company called New World Commerce at the time. They changed their name a few times, but that was more of a e-commerce company, a lot more campaigns, internet and all that. So I kind of got a sense of the buzz that was going on around the internet. So that was great learning as well. And one of the things that is funny, we think about the Irish mommy, but when I said to my mom I was leaving my job, she said, "Oh my God, why would you be leaving a job after a year and a half? They're paying you, aren't they?" This idea. So, that's changed a lot. And obviously in IT, people move every 2 to 3 years, a lot of the time anyway, because of differences in technology advancement or innovation in different companies, or just they want to expand their skills. So movement in that IT world was very advantageous in a lot of ways, but very common as well.
Were you always keen to move into management, or was it something that just happened by default?
So no, it definitely wasn't. I was very much on the technical side, and even when I would lead teams, and I think of myself very different, and the same with our company. We think about leaders and not managers, and I think just saying that makes a huge difference, because managers, you get a sense, and this is draconian, but managers have this view of the pain in the ass, the guy or the lady who's telling me what to do and she's watching over me, and it's just, that's sometimes what comes to mind. But leaders inspire, leaders motivate, leaders lead from the front, leaders look around them and ask, who can I pull up that needs help? Who can I learn from? But also, who can learn from me? Who can I sit beside me right now that's going to learn something? And they're going to be really grateful and be able to bring that back, or give that forward to someone else. So I think leaders is where I see myself. I've always thought of myself as a leader rather than a manager. And to be honest, who wants to deal with all the manager headaches of HR and time off, and I'll leave that to someone else. Let's think about getting those outcomes that we want to drive.
I'm fascinated by this particular point, because I speak a lot to organizations on the difference between leadership and management, or leaders and managers, because there's a huge difference. So when did you realize that difference, though? Because you're very pronounced in your and explicit in your explanation of the leadership traits as you see them. When did you sort of come to realize that for you?
It was actually quite late. I went, after a few jobs in Ireland, I actually moved to the UK for about 12 years. I went to London, and I learned from so many different people. And I contracted a lot. So I was moving around different banks and learning different technologies. And, I learned a lot about finance as well, which stood me in good stead. But I had a manager called Wayne Ross, and he was a leader. He led about 20 people on a huge project in UBS, the investment bank. And he luckily he taught me a lot, and he kind of had me in certain meetings where I was learning to speak and understand what the vocabulary and the outcomes we wanted to drive in meetings. So I learned a huge amount from him, and I still owe him a lot to this day, because what I learned from him, I take forward in everything I do. But that was about 12 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, working with Wayne. And after that, then I just changed. I just, the motivation was there, the inspiration was there. Luckily I work in an industry now in software and database software, where my job is very easy to think about what I do every day. I just think about, how am I going to help customers, enterprises, and partners use our technology. And that's it. Like, if I boiled everything down, it's like, am I doing my job? Am I helping them use and motivating them and enabling them to be able to use the best technology in the world to do what they want to do? So that simple mission in my head helps me lead the teams and the people around me. And as I say, it's not like I never think of management. I think of leadership. It's funny. It's, you don't want to be Alex Ferguson. You want to be Roy Keane. And luckily enough, you have the mix of people. Like I would say, Klopp would be a great example. Like he's a leader, but he's not, he's a manager, but a leader as well. He heads every ball with every player. He celebrates, he's down, he's part of the team. And I think when you see great leaders, and I would consider our CEO to be a great leader, the difference. There's no, it's like black and white. You can see exactly what greatness is. And I think that comes from experience as well. I don't think that's something you just get. It's you do have to nurture, you have to inspire yourself to be able to inspire others. Yeah.
So you said you'd want to be Keane rather than Ferguson. So we just let's tease that out. So where's Keane's leadership strengths as against Ferguson's leadership strengths? Because both of them would be seen successful leaders in both their own fields.
Yeah, no, I just see myself as the Keane. Jesus, where am I going with this? But I would love to be able to be on the field. I don't want to sit in the sidelines and tell people where they should be and, strategize maybe on some of the cases. I want to be on the field leading from the front. I want to be able to celebrate big wins. I want to be able to pick people up when they're down. I want to be able to motivate people. I want to be able to inspire, but I also want to be that kind of person where, I want people to turn around and go, he's doing a great job. He's leading from the front. I want to be like him. And maybe that's something to do with being the youngest of five and wanting to, overachieve or wanting, that sense of kind of elevating yourself. But I think that's where I see myself. Other people are brilliant at the Ferguson role or the managerial role, and that takes skill too. That's not something that comes naturally, but it's just different players, different positions, I think.
So how do you inspire yourself? What do you do to inspire yourself?
Yeah, that's quite difficult at the moment. I'm not saying, obviously COVID is different. And I travel a lot with my job normally. And a lot of that comes down to human contact, right? Talking to people, learning from experience, just being in that social communication, I find really interesting. So that's difficult at the moment. I do spend time on myself. So I like to take a few minutes to do stretching in the morning. I like to walk on the beach. Luckily, I have a beach quite close to me. And I listen to podcasts, whether it's business. As I said, my CEO has a great podcast. And then I listen to Tommy Tiernan or someone else on the other side. And then I have this app called Headway where they're audio books and they're summaries of very influential books, like something like 7 Habits, but it would give you a summary in 20 minutes and you can just, it's an audio book. So it's really good for sometimes at the weekend the kids are going mental and you say, I'm going to take 20 minutes. I might sit in the garden, put the headphones in and just be off somewhere else, take in something that I haven't heard before, something that that's new to me. And the funny thing about inspiration is my inspiration is cut into little segments, these little things that my dad said, don't do, don't think, just do, that has stayed with me since I was 6, or inspired execution, or, thoughtful execution, all these things, they're just little pieces. I don't think I have something that ties them all together, but there is definitely things that I draw on. And then there's the obvious one, like, where do I want to be in 5 years? How do I inspire myself to be the person that I could be? And then on a totally different note, I would say music. I play guitar and piano badly, but I feel like anytime I need to be inspired, I have songs, and they may be soppy songs, they may be sad songs, they may be uplifting songs, but I have these songs that I can play, and they just totally change my mindset. They can get me in a place where, you know, I'm focused, I'm moving towards the flow, I'm going, right, okay, my brain was foggy and now I'm clear, let's go. So yeah, it's a bit of a cheat, but it's something I draw on all the time.
It's not a cheat. So give me an example of some of the songs. You said particularly the soppy ones. Just give me an example of a couple of soppy songs that actually, you know, pivot your mindset.
Yeah, so like a song like Hurt. Do you know the song Hurt? Things like Kings of Leon, you know, Mr. Brightside by who's that again? Yes, other bands, Arcade Fire. Like, there's songs that can just uplift you. And there's a good one, you know, by Arcade Fire. But they all have that sense of changing what you're thinking, what your focus is. And it may be something around family, and maybe something around finances, but mostly it's around work. Because, you know, the tendency, especially in COVID, is you're spending huge amounts of time on your own, looking at a screen. I turn my self view off a lot of the time, because it's distracting, and two, it's just that self absorption, and, you know, you're seeing yourself all the time. So it can be very, very draining. And I work a lot on US time, because my company is located on the West Coast of America. So I deal a lot into the evenings. So if you don't have something to change yourself, especially going to bed and you're still thinking about work, that's why those summary, you know, podcasts are so great to take your mind away from work. But certainly those types of things. I think Hurt is a great one. As I say, lots of anthems from Arcade Fire and people like that.
You come across as somebody who's very focused and you know, very inspirational. And how important is your mindset in your journey at the moment?
I think it's critical. I think your mindset is the thing that differentiates you from everybody else in a way. I mean, everybody can learn. Most people can learn something. Most people can do something, but it's your mindset that changes how you do it and what you focus on. And, you know, everybody can mow a lawn, but how you mow the lawn is actually more important than mowing the lawn, right? So are you focused? Are you paying attention? Are you doing all the right things you should be doing? Or are you just mindlessly mowing the lawn? It's that different idea around focus. And I believe there's a huge amount of you know, value in that flow idea. And I don't want to get too much into that flow idea too much, but if you can get into that area where distractions are taken away and you are focused on, you know, one thing and you do it really, really well, I think that's the difference between most people, you know, and it comes back to those outcomes. How are you driving an outcome rather than just doing an activity? Because they are very, very different things. And most people are very good at activities, but they're very bad at the outcomes. And I think that flow and that focus of approaching work, and I don't want to just say it's about work, I believe that about life as well. Not that I have that life balance yet, that I would say that I'm perfect at the life part, but certainly approaching work the right way, approaching the outcomes the right way with the right discipline. Again, distractions is probably the worst thing you can have in your life. I'm in a cabin in my garden, both for my wife's sanity and my kids' happiness, because when I'm focused on work, everything else goes away. And even though in pandemic times, my kids have been off a lot, and they don't understand that daddy's in work, daddy's just at home. So when I say no, they just go, that means I have to speak quietly when I ask them things, and they still stand there beside me while I'm talking to the CEO of IBM or something like that. So, but being up here, and I'm very lucky, I have a view over Dublin Bay here. So it gives me that great sense of calm, focus, away from distractions. If I need to, I can put on a song and just walk around and get myself stretched out before I need to prepare for something. But there is a sense of control, calm, that the lack of distractions. So I'm in a good place here.
So Patrick, when I work with clients, I give them 3 words to actually probably bring all what you've just said together. I tell them, be at it. So whatever you're at, be at it, and don't be at anything else. So they're my 3 words that I share with you today. Be at it. So when you're at it, if you're out for a walk, you're out for a walk. If you're at work, you're at work. If you're with your family, you're with your family. If you're playing golf, you're playing golf, because you can't execute and get the outcome you desire in any of those individual categories which I just mentioned, unless you're at it when you're at it. And sadly, for many people, one of the famous words that's bandy about is multitasking. My view is, be at the task you're at, and be at that fully focused and committed, and you'll get the best outcome. Whatever the outcome is, you get the best out of that outcome if you're at it for the time that you're involved. So they're my 3 words: be at it.
I think it's perfect. And I'm a big believer in The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. And that's helped me a lot in terms of stress and worry and anxiety and times when your mind races and you feel like things are out of control. And I really found his audiobook and his book to be, I wouldn't say inspirational, it's the wrong word, it's grounding. It's coming back to that place where all I'm doing right now is having a conversation. I don't have to think about the presentation that I'm doing in 2 hours, or what I'm going to have for lunch, or my mortgage and all the other things that I could be thinking about. So, and I think, to be fair, it's harder now than it was. The distractions and the news, especially the news, it's very detrimental to our health, the amount of information we take in today, in a day, and how negative so much of it is. So trying to stay away from that, and I'm not saying I'm perfect in any sense, but trying to stay away from it. It's easier when I'm up here because the radio is always on in the kitchen and the kids are fighting and all these things, but being away and being focused is the best thing for your mental health in a way. And I love what you said there, be at it. It's very hard to do. And I myself need sometimes the music or the podcast or something else that gets me away from thinking too much. And I think, I say it as a cheat because I would love to be one of these people that could just go, no, I'm not going to think about those things now. I'm going to focus. Sometimes you need something, whether it's a song or whether it's a cue of some type to get you into that mood or get you into that flow. But certainly it is where the magic happens. It's where real creativity comes from.
Well, for me, Patrick, I'm really glad that we've had now of this conversation. I found it fascinating. Your journey from Finglas, where your dad said, don't think, just do it, really was the foundation of, so many things in your life. And obviously you talked about your mom and the warmth. I love that expression of the warmth of your mom. I think you'd have been a phenomenal actuary, but there's no doubt that you've made a better career choice because, if you had stayed as an actuary in its purer sense, you'd have lost out in many opportunities of the leadership career that you have forged and that you've driven to date. It's been a real pleasure for me, Patrick, to chat to you today. Thank you so much for taking the time to join the Mindset Shift, and I wish you the very best going forward. Thank you for watching the Mindset Shift.
For more episodes, check out www.talenthub.ie/The Mindset Shift.